If you with it, drop it.
Yo, before we start, I just wanted to show off my curls because like my hair is just like doing what it needs to do. Like it's just giving, and everybody was just commenting on this shirt, y'all. Like I love it so much. I got it from my friend, you know, it's from Botswana, and everybody's like, where's it from? And I'm like, yes, y'all, I got friends. So anyway, this is your girl Mantate, and I am back because last week I didn't have an episode out. I was still recovering from an amazing trip to Cape Town, and that's what we're talking about today. As you can see, I'm very excited, so you can imagine how that was. So first of all, it was so exciting to be back. I feel like being in Cape Town is as close to being home because I'm close to Zim, right? So technically I was home and I loved it. It was beautiful, and I think one of my favorite things is I saw my favorite people. Okay, y'all, I need to structure my thoughts. So first of all, a reminder to please follow me on Instagram. It's called The Mandate Show. On YouTube, The Mandate Show. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music. Just look for The Mandate Show. That's where I'm at. I drop an episode every week, and if you're new to the space, basically The Mandate Show is a space where I just come with the vibes because I'm the girl with the vibes. I basically just come in and talk about what's happening in my life, some of the things I'm learning about life, some of the things that I think you guys should learn, but some of the things that, I mean, you might find that, you know, you don't want to learn, but someone else around you might be, you know, finding something useful about it. So I'm just going to be bringing it to y'all. So The Mandate Show is just a reflection about life, how I'm doing it, and how the people around me are doing it, because I'm bringing all those reflections in, and at some point you will see some people in my show. So this is The Mandate Show, and this is another episode where we're talking about what's up in my life. Like I've already mentioned, today the tea is Cape Town, right? So first of all, I went to Cape Town on the 29th of October. I was back in the UAE around the 3rd, so it was a very tight trip, but I loved it. Like, I love Cape Town. It's like one of my favorite cities in the world, but also just the space I was in, the people I was with, like the vibes were just correct, and that's how I want to talk about it today. Okay, so I'm just gonna like start from the top so that you have a sense of why I was in Cape Town, what I managed to get up to, and then maybe a little bit of like why I should go back very soon. So that's the vibe. I feel like today I have like so much energy. I don't know where it's coming from because it's a Monday. Mondays are supposed to drain you, exhaust you, and all those things, but like, yo, I have energy. I'm just gonna use it today because we get it, okay? So that's the vibe. So anyway, I got invited to this amazing platform called the South-South Social Movement Convergence. So it was a platform that brought together people from Africa, from Asia, from the Middle East, North Africa, as well as Latin America. So it was being hosted by Yaga Africa, an amazing organization that's based in Nigeria that does exceptional work mobilizing young people around elections, around governance. So you definitely should look for them across different social media platforms. It was also being hosted in collaboration with the Open Society Foundation. So those are the people that invited me to this space. And the exciting thing about this invite was obviously getting into a space and networking, because that's like my favorite thing to do. I like networking, I like building new relationships, because a lot of the networks that I've built in these different platforms are the networks that I'm collaborating with right now, that I'm being mentored by, that I'm learning from. So I'm always up for spaces that allow me the space and the grace to actually learn from people and build new networks and connections, right? So that's the first exciting thing. And then beyond just obviously going into the space for this idea of networking, collaborating, sharing experiences and stuff, I was also moderating an amazing panel. Let me tell you guys, when I say amazing, it was amazing from all angles. I remember telling people on the morning, because my session was like the opening panel session of the entire conference, right? So when we got there, and I was just sitting there at the front with the women, because my panel was like all female, and you'll know how I feel about like all female panels. I'm like, yes, girls, bring it, right? So it was an all female panel, and I think what was beautiful about it was I had someone from Kenya, I had someone from Mexico, I had someone from Thailand, and then myself from Zim. So it was like this really global way to panel, and I was just so excited about it. It's amazing women, and I need to name them because they're so phenomenal, and you guys need to look them up. So there was Shakira Wafula. She's from Kenya, an amazing girlie. She's a big advocate of like wellness. So the idea of wellness in the work that we do, because I think when you talk about movements, you know, we talk about the development work that you're doing, or the mobilizing, organizing that you do in your different spaces. we don't always talk enough about, self-care, about mental health for ourselves and the people that we work with. So she's the girl for that. You need to look her up. Her name is Shakira Wafula. The other lady that was on my panel is Emily Palami. She's from Thailand. She's a big advocate of decolonizing the power structures that create vulnerabilities for particular people in communities. She's a very big advocate for safety nets for women. So thinking about, security for women and other vulnerable groups from their countries, from, across borders, and thinking about how they can find safer spaces, access to treatment, access to support psychologically, resources, all those different things. She's the girl for it. She's very passionate. She talks a lot about the resilience that this work requires, because there are instances in the world where funding just disappears, but you still have vulnerable people that depend on you for support. And so she talks a lot about kind of like how we think about that and how we organize around those things. And then the last person on my panel was my girl, Valeria Angola. She's from Mexico. She's an amazing person. And they're running this creative space and platform in Mexico that basically allows young people to mobilize using creative forms. If you know me, you know like I'm a sucker for the creative arts. I'm big on expression. And so I'm very excited to hear her story. They've got an amazing podcast that they run. You should definitely look them up. All their names, the way I say them, just go search them up, look them up. If you're in those regions, even if you're not there, just check out what they're doing. I think it's a great place to kind of like just build new friendships. If you feel like whatever it is that they're doing aligns with what you're doing and you want to build connects, just send them a message and say hi. Mandada spoke about you and said it's cool for us to kind of say hi and see what's up and share ideas and experiences. These are people that are open to sharing their experiences, their ideas as well. So you can imagine just how powered up my panel was, because these are the women I was with. So shout out to them for an amazing opening session, amazing opening panel. I learned a lot from them about what's happening in Mexico, what's happening in Thailand, what's happening in Kenya, and just reflections about what's happening in the continent. So that was like my panel. And then there were other amazing panels across the day. So there was a panel, remember, that had those creatives, right? So my panel touched on creative expression, but there was a specific panel that was designed around the idea of creative expression in kind of like political mobilization, mobilizing around issues of democracy, human rights, right? And so we had singers, we had poets, and across the entire conference there were people that are coming in doing poetry. And what was fun to see was the fact that there were people that actually came with their prepared poems, right? And then there's some that actually wrote their poems on the spot. So I'm like, yo, that's so good at this. So super shout out to those people because they did the most. And then obviously there was entertainment. The music was, it was good. Okay, the DJ was doing the things. Like that DJ, yo, like he was doing the thing. Like there was no moment where there was no music. It was like anytime there's no one talking, nothing happening, music would come through, and just the songs, yo, the selection. I remember we had a conversation about having a Spotify link, like for everybody, because the music was so good and everybody had ideas around what music, could be useful in how people think about their care, just wellness, but also music that is very centered around, organizing, movements. So those are like some of the highlights, right? It's music, it's the platforms. And also, I think one of the things that really challenged me a lot was just seeing my friends, yo. And by that, I mean like people that I met online that I've not met in person, just seeing them and just seeing what they're doing and just being able to see them in real life doing their thing. It was really, really nice. And also seeing my Zimbabwean people. I feel like anytime I see a Zimbo, like, yo, I've seen y'all. If I see one Zimbabwean, I've seen all my Zimbo people because I miss my people. I miss everybody. I do actually. And I always love it when I see my people. So what else? There was so much. Oh, the highlight of the trip. Yo, the highlight. Oops, I'm betting something coming. This is so chaotic. Like, yo, I'm actually making maize. Like I love maize, and this is the season of maize in Zim, but we don't have white maize here. So I'm having to do with like the other kind of maize, and I'm like, it's not doing what it's supposed to do, but I'm gonna work with it. So now I was about to ban it. So yeah, there's so much chaos in this video. But back to the conversation about Cape Town. I was telling you guys about the highlight, and I know I've said a lot of highlights today, but my favorite thing was going to Robben Island. I've been to Cape Town twice. This was the third time, right? And I've never been to Robben Island. So I went there as part of, the excursion for the conference. And so we went there. And I think what was most beautiful was when we go to the boat, right? So when we go to the boat that would take us to the island, they were showing like just a couple of things that basically show you the history of the island. You know, the first people to have lived there, what happened, how the Dutch came, and all those kind of things. But also highlighting some of the people that did really exceptional things in those instances, in the way of fighting back, resisting, you know, oppression, resisting, you know, there's new people that were coming in and trying to dominate everybody. But also, I think what was exciting as well is actually learning that people swim from like Robben Island to like Cape Town. Like, yo, how do you do that? Like, tell me. There are people that actually swim to Cape Town, but also there are people that swim to like a nearby place. I can't remember what the place was, but I was just thinking about it. I was like, no, you'll do like really extreme things, but most of them actually do it for charity, which is bold. But I guess, I don't know, guys, it's just, I don't know how people do it, but it was so fascinating, right, that people actually do that. And what was interesting was the fact that it's not just older people. I think the youngest person that say to have, you know, done the swim is like 11, and I was just like, yo, I don't know, but the child actually raised amazing funds for a charity, so that is actually exceptional work. And then we got to the island, and I think the other highlight at the island was the fact that we got to look around, right? So we get on a bus, so you get off the boat, you got on a bus, and the bus shows you around the island before you get to the prison. So the prison is like the last stop, at least for us. And so we get on this bus, and there's this amazing person, local South African guy, very young person, and he's telling us about the history of the island. And I think one of the things that was so fascinating for me was just the love of history and the knowledge of that history that he had. I think it's very important that we begin to see the value of this subject. So I know a lot of people that think, you know, history as a subject or as a departure for anything in life is not actually a good idea. But I think what I loved was seeing a young person actually use history in such a beautiful way. He was using a lot of humor. He knew so much. People asking him questions and he could answer, and he put a lot of humor in it. It was so much fun. I won't lie, we enjoyed the bus trip. And then we'd stop in a couple of places, take a couple of photos, and then afterwards went to the prison, which is the main feature of the visit. So we get to the prison. So in the prison, something that South Africa has done very, very well, and also interestingly well, is the fact that the people that give you tours of the prisons are actually former prisoners. When you think about it, it's like crazy, because I'm like, the first thing I was thinking about was, it must take a lot to just be able to take people through that space every day, right? Because it's a space that dehumanized you. It's a place that violated you. It's a place that traumatized you, but you're here years later showing people that space, telling people about your experience in that space. So for me, that was like a very big part of the trip. And so we were given a tour, and I remember our guide basically speaking to us about, you know, what kind of like conscientized him to this idea of social injustice and racial injustice in South Africa. So he was talking about his childhood and the things that were so normal to him until he encountered another race and began to see the differences and the treatment, the things that felt unfair, and the aspirations that he had. Because in all of that unfairness, there are ideas that you begin to develop as a child, as a young person, to say, this is the world I want, this is the South Africa I want to exist in. And how that built him into an activist, and how you got to Robben Island, because you got there, he said he got there when he was, I think it was 16, thereabout. Can you imagine? He was so young when he got there. And you remember he was telling us about their birthdays and how some of the ways that their birthdays would be celebrated amongst themselves would be like a barb cake, you know, like picture barb as cake. And then the candle was like, you know, that big candle, the white one that we use when there's no electricity, that was the cake that they were using for their birthdays. And that was so sad, you know, thinking about it. But that's not even like the most brutal of the experiences. There's a whole lot of things. And I think one of the things that he mentioned, there's a lot of things, so I can't say everything, because first of all, my brain is all over. You can see like I'm too stimulated, right? But one of the things that he mentioned that was so interesting for me was how the system created inequalities in that space that kind of like created jealousy and made people fight each other. One of the examples was how when they were sleeping like in an open space, people having like different, it was like a tiny blanket for each person, right? And I remember him saying that there are people that were given blankets and there's some that were not given blankets. And so when you create that kind of inequality, you do create tensions, but he was basically saying the system was designed that way. It was finding at every point an opportunity to create tensions amongst them, to make sure they fight, they're hating on each other and all of those things, which is very, very, very bad. And then I remember he was talking to us and he was laughing, he was so happy, and someone actually asked him a question to say, how do you manage to just tell the story in this beautiful, in this humorous way? How do you make people laugh around a story that basically is potentially the darkest experience of your life? And one of the things that he said that was very important for me and to me is the fact that he's been doing this for 22 years. And he says that when he started doing it, he had actually not sought any sort of help. He hadn't recognized just how badly damaged he was. And so when he started doing this, that actually started coming out, and you realize that he needed help. And that's the time he actually sought professional help. And he has continued to get that kind of support, and that's what has kept him going. Beyond that, he says that the fact that he's saying this story for the, I don't know how many at the time, in 22 years, that speaks to a journey, one of healing, a commitment to healing, but not just healing, but memory. Because when you tell this story, you keep this memory alive, not just for yourself, but for every person that comes into that space that you told that story. And one of the things he mentioned was the fact that he wants for this to be like a reminder to young people that exist today in what it took, what was at stake, and why it's important that they fight for what they want in the same way that they did. And I thought that was so, so powerful. And you know, like, one of the things I hope I'll get to see at some point in my country, in other countries as well. I'm sure there are other countries that are doing it. I don't know if my country is doing it. I've never seen it, but I hope to see it one day. Like, young people and children actually learning from people that were involved in different forms of resistance in their countries for independence, actually sharing their stories. And it's not just independence from empire, from apartheid rule, but also thinking about, you know, resistance in modern times. There's so many people that have been in the struggle for so many years that could be sharing to children, telling them about the role that they're playing, you know, because it's part of citizenship. It's part of, you know, being a citizen of a country. It's part of holding governments accountable. It's part of articulating our aspirations as a country. So I feel like that's such a big part of, you know, of our lives. It's missing for the places that don't have it, but I think it's a good thing that we're seeing it in these countries. We're learning from it, and I think it's powerful that they talk a lot about the kind of support that they got to find their own healing. And I know it's probably a lifelong commitment, because healing is not something that you get for this kind of experience. It's a lifelong journey, but just being able to see the strength in this man, because like a lot of the guys that we saw on that day were actually men. We didn't get to see women, but I think it's just so powerful that people that went through such a dark experience are here teaching us about why it mattered that they did what they did, but why it matters that we value that and build forward with it. It's such a beautiful way of, like, you know, ensuring this intergenerational, you know, knowledge exchange, mentorship, you know, collaborations and things like that. So that was definitely the highlight of my trip. And I'm so glad I went this time around, because it set very well with the theme of our convergence, you know, the idea of organizing as young people around issues of democracy, around issues of human rights. So it was like a beautiful, beautiful experience. I think that was like biggest highlight. I know I keep saying highlights everywhere, but we're allowed to have 1,000 highlights, right? So I think overall that was kind of like the experience at the convergence. But there were also other people that came in that spoke very boldly, you know, around issues of, you know, our country's engagement with the world. I think we all are aware, and I talk about this a lot in my social media, that we need to always, as young people, have conversations about the kind of agency that we want our countries to have, our continent to have, in terms of its engagement with the world. It's our relationship with the US, with the UK, Europe, but also our relationship with China, our relationship with the Middle East, our relationship with Brazil, with India, with Turkey, with whoever. I think one of the things I always say is that countries will have relationships with other countries, but I think what's important is our countries, our continent, having the agency and exercising that agency to relate with these different players in ways that prioritize the interests of our citizens. Because I think a lot of times we look at these relationships and we can see the instances where it feels like we're pawns on this chessboard, where big players are actually just fighting each other over our heads. But I'm like, we are a continent with so many countries, so much human capital, so many resources, and it's very important that we center this urgency, that we speak about it as young people, we project it, we aspire for it, but we also push our governments and hold them accountable in the way that they relate with these other powers. So yeah, I feel like for me that was like the highlight, just this thinking around engagement with other countries, engagement within ourselves. And then the last thing that we did that was an exciting part of the program was working together to build like the draft of a solidarity pact, thinking about how global, south-south solidarity can look like, how we as young people in Southern Africa can relate with young people in North Africa, how Africans can relate with young people in Asia, in Latin America, in the Middle East, in different places that are organizing in different ways. So it was very beautiful to kind of see, the connections in the things that we want to see, in the things that we want to do, and thinking about, okay, what are the principles governing that, and how do we action some of these commitments? So it was exciting to kind of put this document together. It's a draft document, a living document, and I'm excited to see how we build on it. So I feel like, I could tell you all a lot more, but like I've been so stimulated, and I feel like that's a lot of energy given to you guys. That might be full for your cups today. And maybe I can mention as well, Uguti, one of my favorite things about Cape Town obviously is the restaurants, the food, because they're food that you miss, when you're living in a different part of the world. So it was exciting to just go to these restaurants, check out different foods, and enjoy it with my girls as well. It was so nice to see my friends. I think one of the highlights as well was seeing my girl Cindy, because I haven't seen her in a year. So seeing her, hanging out with her, but also making new friendships. I've got new friends. I've got new networks. I'm very excited. I feel like it was such a beautiful trip, and it was good for my mental health. It was good for my emotional health, but I know that it's good for the kind of work that I do. It's good also for like the kind of schooling that I'm doing. And then I didn't mention this earlier, but I feel like it's important as I close. One of the things that also was interesting for me as a scholar, as a professional in that space, was when Valeria was speaking, Valeria from Mexico was speaking, she basically talked about how the platforms that they're creating through this creative expression by young people, for young people, is the idea of building visibility for Afro-descendants. So I think it was important for me because one of my modules this semester is on social and political thought, and one of the things that we've been doing is kind of like tracing the Black experience beyond the geographic Africa, right? Thinking about Black people in Latin America, Black people in the Caribbean, Black people in Europe, in the US over time, dating back to like the 1800s and things like that. And thinking about issues of Pan-Africanism and how it evolved in those spaces and how it influenced all of these other different spaces in the continent as well. So I think it was so beautiful to kind of see how someone is doing that in their work in a creative way. And it ties very well with what I'm trying to study. And even though I'm kind of like speaking back into a historical trajectory or a historical pattern of experiences, it was so exciting to kind of like just situate it in 2025 and say, okay, this is what young Afro-descendants in Latin America are trying to do in terms of trying to linking back to the continent, but also seeing how their solidarity can be expressed to those young people in the continent and how they can benefit from the solidarity that we're expressing towards them from the continent. It was beautiful. It was also beautiful to see young people from the Caribbean, from Latin America, excited to see Africa for the first time. It was so good. Like, y'all, it was so good. And I'm very excited that I got to be a part of that. And I'm very, very excited to see what the collaborations lead to, what the Solidarity Pact builds into. And a special shout out to Yiyaga Africa Open Society Foundations for putting together an amazing space, for bringing young people together, people that work with young people, for convening ideas, for convening, strategies, for convening, solidarity and commitments, but also for the vibes, because it was so cool. It was so, so cool. So yeah, thank you so much, guys, for being a part of my show. The last shout out of the day. The last shout out of the day is to an amazing artist from Nigeria. I'm going to link his Instagram handle in this video, because one of the phenomenal things that he did was he actually drew in 5 minutes. He painted in 5 minutes. He painted a picture of 3 girls from 3 different continents in 5 minutes, yo. It was insane. It was insane. Like, it was so crazy. He's so, so talented. But it was just this idea of, okay, what does global South-South solidarity look like for you? And he just, sat down and started painting. In 5 minutes, he gave us something. And that for me was very powerful. It's just a reminder that, you know, they're young people in different spaces, talented in different ways, doing different things. And whatever you're gifted in, whatever you're good at, whatever you know, use that as your ways to speaking, you know, into the space you want to see, into the kind of solidarity that you want to see. So that was really, really phenomenal. Shout out to him for the talent and also just the dedication to not just using his art for whatever other spaces, but using his art for good, because this is using art for good. So thank you so much, guys, for being here to listen to me tell you all about my Cape Town trip. And if you're interested, I'll definitely be posting on my socials. I haven't been posting much because girl came back to school and it's a lot of work, but I'll definitely be posting. You will see a lot of the experiences that I had. I'll also do a reflection on, you know, the Robben Island experience, share a couple of photos, including of the guide we had and a couple of the, you know, spots that we got to see there, and all of the other things Cape Town related. So yeah, thank you so much for joining me. Remember to subscribe on YouTube, on Instagram, on Apple Podcasts, on Amazon Music, as well as Spotify. Just look for the Mandate Show. And yeah, I drop an episode every week talking about all things my life, my lessons, and just the vibes. So yeah, I hope this was nice. I hope you enjoyed it and that you'll share it with somebody. Bye.